You never asked who paid the hospital bill, the Mafia boss said quietly. Nadia looked up from the coffee cup in her hands. Across the table, William's CO looked exactly the same as he had the day he walked into the review meeting and erased a week of accusations with 4 minutes of calm, devastating sentences. But this time she understood what sat underneath that calm. Not kindness. Guilt. Did you really think money fixed this? She asked. William said nothing. And somehow that silence frightened her more than if he had lied. 3 weeks earlier, Nadia Reeves still believed the worst thing that could happen on Dowell Street was getting home late. The unknown number called at 7:42 p.m. and Nadia Reeves let it ring. She watched her phone light up from across the desk, arms folded, and decided that anything worth knowing would leave a message. Nothing left a message. She went back to the Alderman file and found the gap she had been looking for, a missing 40 minutes in a timeline that was supposed to be clean, and wrote it down in red pen because red meant someone had made a choice they didn't want found. She had worked in litigation support at Greenfield and Marsh for 4 years. Her desk had color-coded folders on the left, 2 pending files on the right, and nothing in the middle. The middle was for thinking. She protected it the same way she protected everything, quietly, without announcing she was doing it. Her supervisor called her thorough. Her colleagues called her intense. Marcus called her the only person he knew who filed her grocery receipts, which she did, because grocery prices went up in patterns and patterns were information. She was not wrong about this. She was also, as Marcus liked to point out, not easy to live near. She skipped lunch that Tuesday. Not because she forgot, because the Alderman gap was bothering her and a bothered Nadia did not eat until she had an answer. By late afternoon, she had found the answer, flagged the file, and then ate a granola bar at her desk while checking the billing department's response to the question she had sent 3 days earlier. They had not responded. She made a note to follow up. This was her life. She had built it carefully. Every part earned. Nothing owed. She had grown up watching unexpected gifts arrive with unexpected costs attached. Eventually she learned the cleanest way to live was to need very little from anyone. Her phone buzzed again at 7:51. Marcus this time. She answered on the second ring. You never call before 9, she said. I know. He sounded tired in the particular way that meant something had gone slightly wrong but not badly enough to say so. Still stuck at the transit hub. Trains delayed again. Just checking in. You don't just check in. He laughed, short and soft. Good night, Nadia. She said good night. She sat for a moment after the call ended, looking at the red note in the Alderman file, thinking about gaps in timelines and what they usually meant. Then she closed the folder and went home, and told herself the uneasy feeling in her chest was just the granola bar. The rain arrived at 9:08 p.m. and Nadia was already on Dowell Street when it did, umbrella up, scanning for Marcus through the wet dark. He had texted her from the transit hub, stuck after the train delay, her apartment was close, could she meet him at the connector road? She had come immediately because that was what she did when Marcus needed something, even when she was pretending she didn't care. She heard the motorcycle before she saw it. High and fast, cutting through the connector road from the wrong direction, engine pushing too hard for a wet surface that narrow. She saw Marcus step into the crosswalk, light in his favor, hand raised, and then the courier swerved late. Marcus hit the curb with his shoulder first, then his head. The motorcycle kept moving and did not slow, and the sound of the engine just got smaller until it was gone. She reached him in 4 seconds. He was conscious, which she told herself meant fine, even as the angle of his wrist told her something she did not want to know. She pressed her jacket against the cut above his ear and kept her voice flat and clear because flat and clear was what the situation needed, and falling apart was something she could schedule for later. Someone from the corner store grabbed 2 fallen bags from the street and shoved them toward her in the confusion. Nadia caught one against her chest while keeping pressure on Marcus's head with the other hand and never looked at it again before the ambulance arrived. A paramedic collected the remaining belongings from the curb while they loaded Marcus into the ambulance. She rode with him. The bag sat in her lap. At the hospital, while a doctor used words like stable and non-critical and will want to monitor, she set the bag down on the plastic chair beside her and finally looked at it. The clasp was different from Marcus's. The strap was thicker. Inside she found a zipper pocket she didn't recognize and, beneath a logistics envelope, a reroute form she had no context for. She looked at it for 8 seconds, long enough to see the timestamp, long enough for her brain to file it, and then took out her phone and photographed it the way she photographed every document she didn't immediately understand, which was a habit she had developed at the firm and had never once regretted. She found Marcus's bag 2 chairs down. Someone had moved it during the rush. She traded them quietly and sat back down and looked at the ceiling and breathed. Across the city, a phone screen lit up with a delivery confirmation. The man holding it read it once, turned the screen face down on the desk without a word, and adjusted his left cuff. Then he picked up his coffee and waited for William to finish his call. William Co. rarely needed to raise his voice. In 11 years of running an operation that required people to be afraid of him, he had found that the quieter he was, the faster problems got solved. He spoke once. People moved. That was the whole system. When the courier bag triggered a tracking alert at 9:34 p.m., William set down his coffee and looked at the screen for 3 seconds. Then he said one word to the man across from him. "Find it." Daeyoung Lim nodded once. William had always read that calm precision as confidence. Daeyoung's memory was precise. He answered questions before they were fully asked. He sat with his back straight and both feet flat on the floor and never once slouched in 6 years of working alongside William, which most people would call professional and which William had simply stopped noticing. He should have noticed. The drive in the bag was encrypted, but the bag was traceable. Daeyoung had a contact confirm the location within 40 minutes, County General. Nadia Reeves was listed as the emergency contact accompanying her brother after a transit connector accident. 2 days later, Nadia Reeves's name appeared in one of William's internal audit reports. The courier involved in the accident had been using a transit route connected to one of his transit companies. William looked at the bill. He looked at the name. He paid it the same way he paid maintenance invoices, efficiently, without sentiment, because a loose end that could be closed with money was the cheapest kind of problem. He noted her employer, her brother's condition, the fact that she had corrected the bag swap at the hospital that same night with everything intact. That told him something about her. He filed it and moved on. Handle the courier's route documentation, he told Daeyoung. Already done, Daeyoung said. He returned the coffee cup to the exact spot it had occupied before, aligned perfectly with the faint ring on the desk. The redirect won't trace back. William thanked him. He was already reading the next file. Daeyoung walked out of the room and down the hall and stepped into the elevator and pressed the button and watched the doors close. The timestamp he had adjusted was clean. The version William had seen was 2 minutes off from the original. 2 minutes was enough. It had been enough for 18 months, and he saw no reason tonight would be different. He straightened his cuff. He rode the elevator down. Marcus had opinions about hospital food, opinions about the compression brace on his wrist, and strong opinions about the fact that his sister had called the billing department 3 times in 4 days about a bill that had already been cleared. He shared all of these opinions from the couch in Nadia's apartment, where he was spending the week because she had decided he was spending the week and Marcus had learned not to argue with her decisions when she made them in that tone. The first call she made to billing, the coordinator told her the balance had been cleared through an insurance adjustment she hadn't filed. The second call, a different coordinator confirmed it and gave her a processing date. The third call, Nadia asked for the specific adjustment code and wrote it down on the back of a receipt because she did not have her notepad near the phone and the receipt was there. Marcus watched her write it and said nothing until she hung up. Then he said, "One day something good is just going to happen to you and you're going to let it." "I let things happen," she said. "Name one thing." She did not name one thing. She put the receipt in her coat pocket and told him she had to get back to work. At the firm on Wednesday, a senior client file went missing. Not physically, digitally. A case folder she had accessed twice during a routine review simply wasn't there anymore. The security log showed her credentials had opened it. No one else's credentials appeared. She reported it to her supervisor before noon, because reporting it first was the only move that made sense if she hadn't done it, and she hadn't done it. Her supervisor said system error. Nadia said system errors didn't remove files. Her supervisor told her to go back to her desk in a tone that meant the conversation was finished. She went back to her desk. She opened her coat pocket. She looked at the billing adjustment code the coordinator had given her earlier. She thought about the bag. She thought about the reroute form she had photographed without knowing why. She thought about a timestamp she had not yet had a reason to question. She did not have enough yet to say anything out loud. But a gap in a timeline was never just a gap, and she had already found one once this week, and the feeling in her chest was exactly the same as it had been with the Alderman file, that precise, uncomfortable certainty that somewhere just ahead of where she was standing, someone had made a choice they did not want found. She made a note to check the transit hub's public shipment records. Then she went back to work and did not mention it to anyone. The misconduct review started Monday. Nadia found out Tuesday, which meant it had been running for a full day before anyone told her, and that was the detail that settled in her chest like a stone, not the accusation, not the evidence, just the head start. By Tuesday afternoon, she was sitting across from HR and the senior partner. The charge was unauthorized data access. Her credentials had opened a restricted client file at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. She had been at County General at 11:47 p.m. on that Thursday, sitting in a plastic chair next to Marcus while a doctor explained what a compression brace was for. She had her phone with her. She had not touched a work file. She had photographs of the waiting room ceiling from that exact hour because she had been too tense to sit still and had aimed her phone up and taken 3 pictures of nothing, which was not something she had ever done before and which she understood now was the most useful thing she had ever accidentally done. She did not say any of this in the meeting. Someone knocked once against the half-open conference room door. A man stepped inside without rushing. Dark coat. Silver watch. Calm face she recognized vaguely from somewhere she couldn't place yet. "Sorry," he said quietly to the senior partner. "Mr. CEO's office is asking for the finalized access logs." The senior partner straightened immediately. "Of course." The man nodded once. His eyes passed over Nadia briefly, not lingering, not curious, just registering her existence the way someone registers furniture in a room. Then he adjusted his left cuff and walked back out. She listened. She watched the senior partner's face and watched the HR coordinator's face and noted who spoke first and who looked at their hands and who was already treating the outcome as decided. She went to her car in the parking garage below the firm. She sat in the driver's seat and opened her legal pad and started writing, because if she was going to fall apart she was going to do it organized. She built the full timeline, the hospital arrival time, the photographs, the adjustment code, the missing file, the credentials she had never shared with anyone. She cross-referenced everything she could reach. She underlined 3 things in red. Then she put the pen down. She sat in the quiet and she let herself cry, which she did not do often and did not do for long, because crying was not a strategy. It was pressure release. She gave it 4 minutes. Then she picked up the pen and added 2 more lines she had thought of while crying, which was the most Nadia thing she had ever done and she knew it. The evidence was too clean. That was what bothered her most. Every piece pointed at her with no explanation for why she would do it. Someone had built this carefully, which meant someone had needed her specifically, which meant this was not random. Somewhere between the bag and the billing department and the missing file, there was a line she hadn't connected yet. She needed one more piece. She drove home. She did not eat dinner. She pulled up the transit hub shipment tracking records and stared at them for a long time. The conference room on the 14th floor had a glass wall facing the hallway, and Nadia had always thought that was a poor design for a room where careers got discussed. She could see the partners through the glass before she walked in. She could see the empty chairs. And she could see the man at the far end of the table who had not been in any meeting she had ever attended, seated, unhurried, like someone who already knew how the next 20 minutes would go and had already moved on to thinking about the 20 minutes after that. She read his name on the guest authorization sheet on her way up. William C.O. Just a time and a signature that was more straight-lined than letters. The review lasted 21 minutes. The senior partner interrupted Nadia twice in the first 3 minutes. Then William said, "Let her finish." Quietly. The senior partner did not interrupt her again. When Nadia finished, William spoke without looking at her. He spoke with the kind of authority that made everyone else unnecessary. He addressed the senior partner in a voice that was quiet and completely certain and left no space for interruption. Greenfield and Marsh handled compliance filings for several transit companies connected to Williams' organization, which was why the unauthorized access attempt had triggered outside attention so quickly. He presented technical records showing the breach had originated outside the building and outside Nadia's credentials, which had been used because her name was already attached to the courier incident. His team had already documented the access route and verified the timestamps. He had a contact name at the city's cyber review office if anyone wanted verification. Nobody wanted verification. The senior partner thanked him. The review closed. Nadia's file was cleared. In the end, William's evidence had closed the review. She caught up to him in the hallway before he reached the elevator. She had rehearsed the thank you twice before catching up to him in the hallway, which she was not proud of but which she had done anyway because saying things correctly mattered and she was not going to fumble this. She said it. It came out exactly right, even, professional, controlled. He looked at her then. Not the way he had looked at the paperwork, and not the way the senior partner had looked at her, which was the look of someone relieved to be finished. He looked at her the way she looked at a gap in a timeline, like something had not quite resolved the way it should have and he was still running the numbers. "You're welcome," he said. The elevator opened. He stepped in. She stood in the hallway and understood, with complete calm, that she was furious. Someone had fixed her problems so cleanly that she couldn't argue with the outcome, and she was going to have to carry that, the being saved, the not being asked, the fact that he had walked into a room and spoken 4 minutes of quiet words and undone something that had been dismantling her for a week. She went back to her desk. She opened her legal pad. She wrote his name at the top of a new page. She was not done. She told herself she was finished with it. She said this on a Friday night to her empty apartment while eating rice she had made 3 days ago, which she had reheated without caring, which was how she knew she was lying to herself, because Nadia Reeves always cared about reheating things properly. She was not finished. She was just tired. She pulled up the photograph on her phone. The reroute form from the bag, 8 seconds of looking in a hospital waiting room, 1 photograph taken out of habit. The timestamp at the top read 8:51 p.m. She pulled up the Transit Hub shipment tracking records in another window, the same records she had been staring at for 3 nights, and found the courier's package scan. 8:49 p.m. 2 minutes. The package had arrived at the hub 2 minutes before the reroute was issued. That meant the redirect had not been sent in advance. Someone had watched the delivery happen in real time and issued the reroute after the package was already inside. Packages already scanned for departure were not supposed to be rerouted at all. Errors happened before. This had happened after. That was not an error. That was a decision made by someone watching a screen, waiting for the right moment, adjusting a cuff and doing nothing to stop what came next. She wrote it down. She stared at what she had written for long enough that her coffee went cold. She thought about what it meant to follow this further, which was that she might be walking toward a world she did not belong in. She thought about Marcus in a compression brace. She kept looking at the timestamps long after the coffee went cold. She spent the weekend finding William Seo's firm contact through layers of public professional records. Merchant Row appeared twice in recent firm event listings, and one restaurant still had a standing Thursday reservation under the firm's name. She wrote the timestamps down on a page from her legal pad. She folded the page once and slipped it into the front pocket of her coat, the place she used for things she wasn't finished with. She had not been this afraid of being right about something since the Alderman file. 8:51 p.m. The number sat in her chest like something alive. William had stepped into her review before she even understood why he was involved. If the courier route connected back to him somehow, then the timestamp might matter to him too. For the first time, Nadia wondered how many other people already understood what the timestamp meant. She arrived at the restaurant on Merchant Row 20 minutes before his lunch booking, ordered water, and sat with her coat still on because she was not staying long enough to need to take it off. She had the page with her. She had decided on the walkover that she would say 3 sentences and then stop talking, because 3 sentences was enough and everything after 3 sentences was just nerves pretending to be useful. When he walked in and saw her, his face did not change. The restaurant manager crossed the room almost immediately. "Your usual room is ready, Mr. Seo." William barely glanced at him. "This is fine." The manager nodded once and stepped away so quickly it felt less like hospitality and more like dismissal. He crossed the room, pulled out the chair across from her, and sat down. He did not ask how she had found him. He looked at her the way she had noticed he looked at most things, measuring the distance between where something was and where it was supposed to be. She put the page on the table. 1 page. Transit log printed from the public site, time circled in blue pen. Reroute timestamp in her handwriting below it, the 2-minute gap underlined once. She kept her hand flat on the edge of the paper, not pushing it toward him, just placing it where he could reach it. The reroute was issued 2 minutes after the package was already inside the hub, she said. Someone was watching the delivery happen live. That's not a logistics error, the timing doesn't make sense. She stopped exactly where she had planned to. He picked up the page. He read it. Then he read it again, slower, and she watched his eyes move across the numbers in a way that told her he was not reading anymore. He was checking it against something he already knew, and what he knew and what she was showing him were not the same. He set the page down on his side of the table and did not hand it back. The restaurant moved around them. Someone laughed 2 tables over. Neither of them looked up. "How did you find this?" he said. "I photograph documents I don't understand," she said. "I always have." William's expression changed almost imperceptibly, but she saw it. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the hallway, that same unresolved calculation, except this time there was something underneath it that hadn't been there before. She had just given him something his entire organization hadn't. A paralegal with a photograph habit had found what his operation had missed. She could see him working out what that meant, and she could see it was costing him something to sit with it quietly. "I need a day to verify this," he said. "I know," she said. She picked up her water glass. For the first time since meeting him, Nadia watched William Seo leave a room looking unsettled. Somehow, that frightened her more than anger would have. He found her the next evening at the coffee place 2 blocks from the firm. She went there when she needed to think without her desk in front of her, which he had known because he had spent the past 24 hours learning the shape of her routine with the same quiet efficiency he applied to every problem that mattered. She did not ask how he knew where she was. She was beginning to understand what his knowing things looked like, and she had decided to save her questions for things that actually needed answers. He sat down. He placed both hands flat on the table. He told her the truth, not all of it. She understood there were edges she would never reach, but the parts that had touched her life directly. The bag had held a drive belonging to his organization. The courier redirect had not been a system error. Someone inside his operation had issued it manually, watching the delivery in real time, because they needed the bag to move through a slower route so a copy of the drive could be intercepted before it reached William. Marcus had been hurt because of decisions made inside William's organization, not intentionally, but carelessly enough that the difference no longer mattered to Nadia. William had not known. Not until she had put that page on the table at the restaurant. Not until she had shown him the timestamp gap. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at her coffee cup. Then she looked at him. "You never asked who paid the hospital bill," William said quietly. Nadia looked down at her coffee cup. "Did you really think money fixed this?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. She watched his face and she could see the answer before he said anything. She could see that he had genuinely believed it would be. That a cleared invoice felt, to him, like a door he had properly closed. "I thought it was the right thing to do," he said. "It was the minimum thing," she said. "Not hard. Just accurate. Marcus still checks both sides of the street twice before crossing." William said nothing. Somehow that made it worse. He did not argue or explain or recalibrate out loud. He absorbed it the way someone absorbs something true, without reaching for a counter. For the first time, Nadia thought he might actually regret it. 3 weeks passed. From the outside they looked like ordinary weeks, the kind with normal mornings and unremarkable lunches and commutes that blended together. From the inside they felt like the period after a held breath finally releases, when your body isn't sure yet whether it's safe to go back to normal. Marcus graduated from the compression brace on a Tuesday. He celebrated by cooking dinner at Nadia's apartment, which meant burning 2 things and saving 1, which was his average and which she did not comment on. He looked better. She looked like herself, which he understood was the best she ever looked and which was, for Marcus, enough. She did not ask William how the reroute situation had been resolved. She had asked once, simply, "Is it handled?" He had said yes. She had nodded and that had been the whole conversation, and she was at peace with that because she had learned the shape of his world by then. Some doors in it didn't open inward. She was not going to stand in the hallway demanding a tour of rooms she hadn't earned and didn't need. Her misconduct file was closed permanently and scrubbed from the firm's internal record, which was the kind of outcome that didn't happen through standard process, which she knew and did not ask about. She kept her job. She kept her desk with the color-coded folders on the left and the clear space in the middle. She kept going. What unsettled her most was how quickly she had started accounting for him in her decisions. On a Tuesday morning she found a piece of paper on her desk. Reception said someone had dropped it off an hour earlier and left before they could ask questions. Plain white. No letterhead. A phone number she didn't recognize, and below it, in handwriting that was efficient without being warm, "If you have questions." She read it twice. She thought about putting it in the pending pile. She put it in the front pocket of her coat instead, the same place she had put the timestamp page, and went through the rest of her day without mentioning it to anyone. She called that evening. He answered on the second ring. "I have one question," she said. "Go ahead." The redirect was issued knowing it would force the courier onto the Dowell Street route, she said quietly. Did whoever did it know someone could get hurt? Silence. Not avoidance, she could tell the difference now. He was deciding how much truth she could handle. No, William said. He knew the reroute would force the courier through a narrower connector route in bad weather. He didn't know your brother would be there. She let that sit between them for a moment. Outside her window the city did what it always did, moved, and lit up, and asked permission from no one. "Thank you," she said. "For answering that honestly." "You would have found it eventually," he said. "I know," she said. "But you answered it first. That's different." She ended the call. Some debts cannot be paid. Some ledgers were never the right language.